Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to see you here again, and welcome to another episode of Dojo Live, broadcasting from multiple locations, mainly from the Mexico City offices from Alf Nearsoft, and I have a very special guest today. He's going to be telling us a great story about something involving what's in here, which is coffee. Okay, and also we're gonna have a co-host, and then I think that without further ado, I think I should introduce them by their names. So welcome, Braydan Young. Okay, he's the co-founder of CoffeeSender.com, and of course, as in many other past occasions, I'm pleased to announce Luis Dario Davila, my fellow Nearsoftian, who's broadcasting from. What are your whereabouts today, Luis Dario?
I'm right now in Querétaro.
He's in Cancun.
Oh,
Yeah, I stay here for another week.
Oh, I hate you, Dario. I hate you for that.
I'm actually in Querétaro right now.
Okay, excellent. So, Braydan, Luis Dario, thank you for your time. Thank you for having agreed to be here with us today. And let's start talking about today's subject, which is kind of cool because I kind of fancy coffee myself, and I'm the type of person who would like walk the mile to go get me a cup of coffee. Sometimes that's not really necessary now. Now, thanks to Braydan and what he's doing with CoffeeSender.com. Braydan, I'd like to. Why don't you? Let's start with having you tell us your story, introduce yourself to the audience, and talk to us about what you're doing with Coffee Center. By the way, what I like to mention about Braydan is that he's a uh, he's a business development, a great business developer. He's driven and he's focused on driving results, actually, and building better relationships with clients and so forth. But I'll tell you what, I think he's better qualified to tell us what he's doing with his this project called Coffee Center. Braydan, what's the story behind Coffee Center? Let's start by that, and then
Yeah.
welcome to the show.
No, I'm really excited to be here. I think, Carlos, if I could start my mornings with you just giving a quick pump up speech like that every morning, it'd be great. You see, I think that would get me very excited to approach the day if I had that every single morning. So, Coffee Center, what it is, I mean, and kind of where the idea came from was a couple. I've always been a sales guy in my past, and I have always done from software sales to insurance sales to SaaS sales, and probably about a couple of years ago, we got the idea we wanted to get more demos. We were a startup. We're like, how do we get in front of more people? How do we start engaging with more folks? And so we actually bought physical gift cards from a place I'm pretty sure you probably know the name of. I'm supposed to use Post-it notes, so I can go like this. From this place, maybe you recognize that.
Yeah, of course.
So we ended up buying a ton of gift cards from Starbucks, and we actually mailed them in the mail to our prospects. It was like, and so we'd write a note saying, "Hey, we'd love to show you a demo of exactly what it is that we're doing. Give me a call, and here's a Starbucks gift card. Go grab coffee on us, and then call us." So that was kind of the start of Coffee Center. And from there, we got a bit smarter. We're like, what if we automate this? What if we actually hired some engineers and built a way for us to be able to not send physical gift cards because mail is expensive, but to actually be able to send emails and send links in those emails. And then we can track and see if they use it, and if they don't, we can get our credit back for it. So that was sort of the next step. We started building out this kind of automated process. We plugged it into Salesforce and SurveyMonkey and Marketo and Pardot, and we're like, let's start sending these things out and trying to see if we can get more demos. And it worked pretty well. It actually worked really well. And we started to generate more demos at our current companies. And then from there, we were like, all right, what's the next step? What if we started working with conferences? What if we started working with other agencies? And at this point, wasn't a full-time job. So still side gig, still kind of a way to just make an extra buck and work from, you get home until you go to bed sort of job. So the thought was, like, let's buy some more gift cards and we'll mail those out. So at that point, when we tried to go buy the gift cards, we actually got shut down from that very large logo that I showed you earlier. They're like, we don't know who you guys are. We're not going to sell you anything until you kind of tell us what it is that you're doing with wanting to buy thousands of gift cards. They're like, we have no clue who you are. So from there,
Which doesn't really make much sense, right? But okay.
yeah, you know, a lot of it, you know, they want to make sure that their brand is represented properly, and you know, they have these two random guys in San Francisco saying, "Hey, can I buy a bunch of gift cards from you?" They're like, "No." Like they're like, I mean, and it wasn't like 100 or 200. It was like we wanted 10,000 gift cards, and they're like, I don't know who you are. So from that point, what we started doing was figuring out where we could take the company and where we can actually like who we could buy those cards from, how we could fulfill the orders that we had. And we started talking to those guys directly to figure out if there was something there as we could show them what it is that we were doing. Like, hey, this is what we're using those cards for, is to generate meetings, is to generate demos, is to use it with account management. So after all those conversations, they ended up letting us move forward with actually purchasing that volume of cards. And at that point, we knew it was time for both of us to kind of leave our full-time jobs and go actually see where we could take this startup. And I can talk about how the money and funding side worked and how we figured that out. But we ended up saying, all right, like now we have the volume we need. We have the people who are supplying us. Like this is a real startup. This is a real company. Let's take the plunge, if you will, and go see what we can turn this into, which was by far the scariest moment of kind of going and joining your own company. And we're only a couple months in, so good so far, and you know it's been a lot of trying to figure out sales and trying to figure out you know, with the right partners and trying to figure out, you know, who to talk to and how to actually sell the solution. But most companies are using it as an engagement platform or engagement tool to connect before a demo, to send before a webinar to get people excited about joining. Like this, for example, if all the attendees got a coffee for attending is what people would use it for. Account management to kind of build that relationship, for a referral thank you. So good so far. That's kind of the story in a nutshell. But as I said, I'm in San Francisco in my very small startup office. I have 2 chairs in here. I can fit 2 chairs. So success, right?
Actually, now that you bring it up, I mean, when you're just starting out, there's a story about Nearsoft and its humble beginnings, like something that we affectionately call La Casita, which was just a little house where, you know, with a couple of people, you know, with the founders, but that's another story. We'll save that for later. Okay, so yeah, so that's the kind of like the startup world. Well, I'm starting to write it down. I have my own questions, but I'd like to ask Dario. You do the honors, Dario. So let's go ahead and start with you. Yes, please. And so feast away, and the mic's all yours. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, actually, I was talking with Braydan just a little bit before about how, okay, his like he was saying he's always into sales. When he was a student, he was a business major. So there's a lot of business majors out there trying to get a startup going on, creating a product and stuff. So Braydan, being a business major, not being able to code, how was like, okay, I want to build this. How was the first things in your checklist to go with? You already know what the problem is. You already know how to approach it in a business kind of way. But in the whole company, whole startup, the other things that is not business related, how do you put your cape of, okay, I'm the leader, and I have to do all this thing to, you know, to create this startup or this product?
Yeah, you know, I think there's really 2 options when it comes to when you're on the business side and you're not on the coding side. Because, you know, you look at a lot of successful startups that have grown into large companies. Most of the time, or some of the time, you have 2 guys that are on the engineering side, right? Like they don't have the sales side, but they build a great product and it sells itself. Then you might have other partnerships where you have one guy who knows the sales and the other one who knows the technology side of things, which is fine as well. That is actually the most successful. The issue that we had was we knew the product we wanted to build, and I was the sales side of things, and my partner, he is more product. So he he wasn't that great of a coder either. So we're trying to figure out the best way that we could do this. And the beauty of the world being flat and having multiple options of like how to build this thing out was we actually went to Odesk, which is, or now Upwork, I guess is what it's called now. And we went to Upwork and we actually hired engineers from that site and we wireframed out our entire site, what we wanted to look at, like what we wanted it to look like, and we sent that to them. So it was a ton of phone calls at 6 in the morning and at midnight to try to walk through exactly what it is that we wanted and what our designs we wanted it to look like. The problem was that you can check and make sure these guys are building it correctly, but we went through probably 5 engineers to make sure that we were talking to the right folks. And still today we work with that exact same team. And my co-founder, like, he talks to them early in the morning and late that evening to make sure that everything was built properly. So it's kind of funny. It's actually it's like a 24-hour clock. Like, so we sell during the day. Any bugs that we come up with that we need fixed, we post on like our Trello board. And then that night, the engineering team fixes it, and we wake up in the morning, and hopefully everything's done. So it's kind of cool, but at the same time, like, we've had to learn sort of the 101 of engineering to figure out that these guys are building it properly. But I don't if you don't know coding, if you're a business major and you're like, I have no clue how to do this, there's always a way to have someone do it for you, to find someone to do it for you even cheaper than probably you doing it. Because once you build something that's great, but selling it is really what's the toughest part, right? You want to make sure that you have a product that's actually selling and people are actually wanting to use, because there's tons of startups out there that everyone's like, yeah, this is a great idea, but I would never use it. So I think like that's the interesting part in being a business major, is you're the one who gets to go out there, talk to the customers, sell the solution. And if you ever meet with a VC firm, the first question they ask you is, what does your MRR look like? Like, how much are you selling? Like, that's number one, unless you're building a data company, and then it's a whole other world. That's a different story.
Okay. Yeah, and actually, like, you touch a really important thing there. Like, when you start to build the product, you told us that you have first going like sending the Starbucks gift cards by mail. That was like your validation part of the customers really, or the market really wants the idea. But what other kinds of validation process you think, like going into the lean startup ideology, to make an MVP and then see how it going on, and start pivoting and validate your idea. What kind of validation do you make?
I showed my mom. She was like, "That's awesome."
I think moms are the best filter for almost anything, right? Moms are the best filter.
Yeah, and she was like, "I would use this." I'm like, "Perfect." This is exactly what I want. So probably besides having the idea up front, like that was, and then building it out and kind of trying to design. Actually, let me back up. So with mailing the gift cards first, we knew that was a solution that I think we read about in a blog at some point, that it was effective. And so we tried it and it worked. And they were like, what if we automate this, was kind of the next step. And we thought that would work because it just made it easier. Because we were like, all right, we can send it out. We know the strategy works, but what if we deliver in a different way? So that was kind of the first iterations. Once we had the first customer who was sending more than 1,000 gift cards in any given week, that's when we're like, all right, this is an actual company. Once we started watching people send a gift card to a prospect or to a referral, and they would sign up for the service as well without even knowing what it was, like the answer would be like, yeah, hey, let's have a demo. Also, how did you send me this coffee? Like, this is a really cool service. Like, for us, like, that was major validation. We're like, all right, so people actually think this is effective. It's a new way of reaching out. And then probably the last one was with the invention of tons of email automation systems. It used to be a lot harder to do a mail merge, to like send an email to 100 people or to set up a drip campaign. It used to be a lot tougher. You used to have to know how to use mail merge in Excel, and it was a difficult process, right? Now, with there being so many tools that do that, it's a lot easier. So you have to find a new way of how to reach out, a new way of how to get in front of that prospect. And people have tried all kinds of things, and we read tons and lots of reading, tons and tons of blog posts around like what the most effective ways are and creative ways are. And we kind of fit right into there. We're like, all right, we're something different in sales. That's great. So we think this works well in sales. But then from there, we knew we needed more than one vertical because so we went to kind of marketing, and we're like, all right, so like, can we make this adapt in marketing? Yeah, we can. And then from there, I was like, can we make this work in recruiting and HR? So people are using it in recruiting where before an offer letter or a phone screen, they'll send a gift card to somebody saying, hey, here's a coffee on me, go grab a coffee, and then we can talk about the role. And then we've seen expansion there. Our biggest one is in customer success and in account management. So when you're given a brand new contact or brand new client that a sales guy sold, usually as an account manager, you weren't really involved, so you're not really sure what was sold to them, and there's no relationship there. So any way to kind of build that relationship out on a good step, the very first meeting, whether that be a coffee or a killer phone call, I mean, that was kind of, so I think that kind of answers your question. It's like that trickle-down effect where we took our idea and we're like, where can this apply to, and how many things can we apply this strategy to, and that was sort of our validation of growing it out.
Okay, perfect. Okay, what about, I don't want to take all the spotlight, Carlos. What about you?
No, that's fine. That's fine. Actually, they say there's a saying, the more the merrier, right? But I have my own set of questions myself. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, Braydan, is the following. I can relate to, I personally, Carlos Ponce, can relate to the coffee part because I really, truly like coffee, like I said at the beginning. But, and this is just an open question, when you chose the concept, or you thought of a name for the concept, say, okay, coffee sender, for obvious reasons, you're kind of, I mean, from my perception, isn't it kind of limiting to just being limited to coffee, or is this a model that can be applied to other things that you can send out in people's direction? I don't know, just
that's
like ice cream or something, whatever. It's just thought of it.
That's a good VC question right there. Okay, like what does that future growth look like? So our name, we started as Coffee Center because it was kind of the easiest thing to adapt. Like people do business over coffee, which is kind of the title of the webinar. People tend to, when you're like, hey, let's meet for coffee Monday through Friday, there's usually some sort of give and take business relationship or something taking place there. Like, hey, I need help looking for another job, or I need help with X. So people are used to doing business over coffee, so it applied really nicely to the name. Now, the actual umbrella company is called Sender. So not just Coffee Center, and the reason we did that was for exactly that. I mean, we think we can apply this API to other industries, whether it be like sending lunch from, like having a button in Salesforce that was like, hey, like I can send lunch, or I can send ice cream, or I can send whatever have you. The biggest thing with us is being able to have the tracking and sending things. So when you send somebody, like I think the most not ideal, but I think the number one thing people send is a bottle of wine, right? Like, hey, like thanks so much for X, like here's a bottle of wine on me, and there's really no way to track that you sent that to that person. So I think we built the plumbing for this with Coffee Sender, so I think down the road we can absolutely apply that to whatever the item might be at the end of the day. With our API, we can plug it into pretty much anything. So that's a fantastic question, though, like one that we get quite often as the, hey, can I send other things? Or can I send other things besides coffee? Like, can I send somebody a gift card to some restaurant or something like that? So I think that'll be kind of a down the road goal of ours on the roadmap.
Excellent. Yeah, and we're all going to be on the lookout for that, because as much as I like coffee, say that there might be people out there that could, better be impressed if they receive a certificate for, as you said, for wine, or for ice cream, or for a Subway sandwich, whatever it is. But
a $5 footlong. People would like to get I imagine I would take a demo for that. Hey, here's a turkey sandwich on me, and be like, all right, let me know.
There you have it. Okay. Well, that was my first question on the business side. That's one of the things that I was thinking of. The second question that I'd like to ask you is and I'm intrigued because you mentioned at the beginning that you're growing, you're a startup, you have all the energy in the world, and you're a group of people just working together towards one goal. And then, how do you envision and also you brought up the old desk part, which is Upwork now. So how do you envision the engineering side or develop the growth of your development team? Because Odesk and Upwork are a totally different model of what from what I know about the industry, is a totally different model of what on a startup or something that really aims at growing looks like. So what's your vision in terms of development team growth? Are you going to switch from going to Odesk to having someone in house,
Yeah,
or offshore, Asia, a distributed team? How's it going to work?
I think we're gonna have to. I mean, when we first started, it was a good, inexpensive solution to be able to have those folks working for us, and it worked out well because they were working on a different time zone. But I think as we grow and as we continually want more things in the platform, we're gonna have to bring it in house and find somebody who can work for us directly here. So we met that team, and hopefully Upwork isn't working. We met that team on Upwork, and then we actually hired them outside of Upwork. So they're working for us directly, which is great. But at the same time, there's always it's been a year and some change, and they're doing a great job. But I think eventually we're going to have to bring it in house to just make sure our stuff is built within time, to make sure that there's less bugs, to make sure we can fix bugs in the right time zone, not have to wait a night to do it. So I think we're going to have to do that. So that's probably, in terms of team growth, that's one of the first hires we're going to have to make. Another one is customer success, or just some sort of client success with us, because we have a lot of users on the platform, which is great, and they're all paying very low amounts to use the system, which is how we want to build, which is how we designed it. Is we didn't want to have to pay a lot of money to be able to send coffee to folks, but there are certain problems that come up that we just need someone to handle and make sure they answer the right questions in real time. And nothing's worse than when you have a problem with the site and you submit a question. They're like, we'll get back to you in 72 hours. You're like, great. So I'm just gonna wait until they respond to my problem. So I mean, it's one thing having a great FAQ that you can go and look at, but it's another thing when you can actually have real-time chat or real-time email. And so I think support and success is important to us as a company as we've started to figure out who our first hires need to be and what they need to do. And then I'm biased, but I think sales after that, making sure I have someone to help me out in terms of doing demos, in terms of kind of targeting the right clients. We have two approaches. One being kind of account-based, hey, we know we need to target this Fortune 1000 clients. Our other side of it is we know we need to target the SMB mid-market type clients. I think both those are important approaches. They're both very different because one's all referral-based and the other one is more just getting information out there. I think something that I wanted to mention when we were talking earlier was one of the issues that we had early on that we weren't expecting was, and it was a major hurdle, was people thought the idea was really cool, but they weren't really sure how to use it. Mm-hmm. So they were like, great, coffee, I like coffee. They're like, why would I send this to somebody? So I think that's been a big hurdle for us, is building a lot of white papers and case studies around hey, you're doing this, maybe you should try sending them a coffee, or hey, this is the activity today, maybe you should try sending. So that's been a major challenge. And so, and this in terms of kind of growing a team, if we can find somebody to help us build content, that would be awesome, because I'm not a very good writer.
Okay. So you mentioned the keyword here, content, right?
Yeah.
So content happens, and this is from my experience, happens with the passing of time. So it's kind of hard to just sit down and crank out something, because content is usually based on stories, on things that have happened or things that are happening. And so if you were to build a story around coffeesender.com, what would it be? What would you like to tell your audience? What kind of stories would you like to build around Coffee Sender?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest story that we like to hear is just success stories and engagement stories, right? I mean, if you had, I love stories where you had a deal that was stuck as a sales guy, and or sales girl and guy, but I would say guy, and you sent them a a coffee and they got back to you right away and said, hey, listen, I totally forgot about this. Yeah, let's do this deal. Let's push it through. Let's make it happen. And the reason they responded was because it was a different way to reach out. Like it wasn't the typical, hey, just checking in. It was, hey, here's a coffee on me. How about you go look at my contract that I sent over 3 weeks ago, and then we can figure out if this is something that you want to do or not. So those are great success stories. In terms of account management and marketing and customer success, I mean, when we hear stories around people being able to build a really good relationship with somebody, or being able to thank somebody over coffee and them getting an email back saying, hey, thanks so much, this is really cool, I really appreciate the coffee, I think it's fantastic for us. The last thing, we actually just built this. We got asked a lot for people like to thank their employees on their birthday. It's always tough when you're sort of spread out, right? Like if you're in headquarters and there's the HRs there, they can give you a big balloon and whatever have you. But we built out this tool where you can upload your entire company's list of employees and their birth dates, and on their birthday they can get a coffee from the company saying, hey, listen, happy birthday, here's a Starbucks coffee on us, go grab it, and we'll see you in the office. And that has been really cool to kind of see how companies have been using it and leveraging it, and how it just kind of builds the culture of a company of just saying, hey, happy birthday on your special day or whatever have you. So that's not really answering your question, but so story, I would
Story
say
is a story.
Yeah, I would say as an engagement platform, I mean people connecting and being able to connect over coffee, and being able to connect even if they're across the country or across the world from each other, being able to have a cup of coffee and talk about business is kind of our story that we're trying to build to still encourage business to be done over coffee, but you don't have to be in the same place.
Okay. One more question, and then I'll pass on the mic to Dario. I'm assuming because Coffee Sender kind of integrates with Salesforce and Gmail and SurveyMonkey and the like. You can be more specific on that if I'm mistaken.
Yeah. No, it is.
Okay, but my question is this: you can set up a campaign and send something out, but if you're thinking of triggers to do this, what kind of triggers are you looking at from your prospects or whoever it is that you're going to send the certificates to? What are the triggers?
Oh yeah, no, great question. So yeah, no, we're plugged into SurveyMonkey and Salesforce, and a lot of the triggers that people have is a lot of based on information that they want. So for example, if there's a webinar and people are using whatever system for that webinar and they fill out all the information and they sign up for it and they're put into a campaign in Salesforce, they get a coffee automatically saying, hey, thanks so much, talk to you next week or talk to you on Tuesday for the webinar. Or they can delay it to have it go out before the actual webinar. In terms of SurveyMonkey, people do it all the time for, hey, I'm looking for information about X, or I'd love to hear what you thought about whatever, and for your time, we'll send you a coffee. So the trigger is information given, coffee back to the actual individual. Same thing if you're using it in a marketing automation system. Someone goes and visits your page, someone goes and you want them to return, so that could be a trigger to have them try to come back. So that's a lot of the ways that we build it. It was using campaigns in Salesforce and using triggers to make sure that you're sending these at the proper time to folks.
Yeah, and the proper question and the proper people too, because
and the right people, right? I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what happened, for example, by the way, this ties into what Dario just mentioned. Say, what happens if you send a certificate for coffee to someone who actually hates coffee? It can happen, right? So, what happens? Have you had any response on that? I mean, like a reply email or something like, please don't send me this or whatever. Tell us about your horror stories. We all have horror stories, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we get that all the time. People are like, I don't drink coffee, or no one, so whatever have you. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, it's a gift card, right? You can go and get yourself a frappuccino, or I guess that's coffee still. Get yourself a tea. I don't whatever they might. I mean, so that of course is a major pushback. But I mean, essentially, you're getting a gift card, right? So it's one of those things where you can go and when you actually get the email, there's 3 ways that you can use it. You can tie it directly into your app, so you can just push the money into your application, your Starbucks app, or you can show them the email. There's like a barcode on there, or you can print it out. and horror stories, people tend to be kind of confused on like how to redeem it sometimes, which is fine. So we always joke, we're like, I'll come meet you at Starbucks and then you get yourself a free coffee if they're in San Francisco. I'm just kidding. But I think that that's a good point. Other horror stories are when we built everything and we tested it out with UI UX, but I'm always amazed by the kind of trouble people get into on the site, where like they'll click a button or end up in a place where I'm like, I never thought anyone could do that in our site before. Like, you're like, how did you end up in the total wrong platform, the total wrong dashboard? And so like you try to design things, and my wife is on the designer side, so she always gives me a hard time about it because she warned me. She's like, you're going to have people that end up in weird areas, and you got to make sure that you have the support to point them in the right direction. So I think that's always been a horror story as well, as people will get lost and they're not really sure what they're doing. So to make sure you can at least pick the phone up and guide them in the right way is always a challenge.
Okay. Yeah, maybe at some point I can have you talk to our UX UI guys here, which is also there's a UX. I don't know much about it, but maybe Dario does about the UX UI initiative that we have here at Nearsoft. But or we can talk about that later. That's at your convenience. Okay, Dario, you're next.
Oh yeah, actually I was keyword that you say before. I was like, it's for enhancing networking, but looking like in the startup guy way to networking, because I always hear like, oh, you have to sell, but you don't have to sell. And I was like, what? Okay, yeah, I have experience selling, but when you actually go and sell something, people tend to get like, yeah, they don't like to sell things. So how do you think that, like, give some advice of how to do the right networking the right way without be too I don't know, too aggressive, or to how to do the right networking, or how your experience with networking is?
Yeah, I think no one likes the sleazy sort of sales approach, right? I mean, like, I think if you watch all the sales movies like Glengarry Glen Ross and Wall Street and all those movies, like, that is what you don't want to be. So like, don't do that. I think when it comes to networking, and I know all geography is different depending on where you are, but you don't need to really be selling hard to anybody. I mean, by having a conversation around like what it is that you're doing is effective, and if it relates to that person, great. If it doesn't, then it's not a fit for you. But you and I were talking earlier. One of the biggest things in networking is to never stop. So if you have a softball league that you're in, or if you play soccer on the weekends, or football on the weekends, and whatever that might be, or you're taking a cab home and you're splitting a cab, like I know you guys have Lyft and Uber. Lyft and Uber is like the best networking ever. So like, because you have a captive audience, we have Uber Pool, so like you get other people get in your car and you go to a certain location. Everybody who gets in those cars with you is someone who you can potentially have a conversation with. Of course, make sure they want to talk, but you kind of always need to be on. So I had an old boss who was famous for this. So she would always be asking conversations like, hey, like, what do you do? And and like, what's your name? And she would always follow up and always make sure that if something happened in that conversation, always make sure she had a next step. So she was really good. Like, if you were in an Uber or a Lyft, she would always ask what everybody did and hand out her business card. It was almost too aggressive sometimes. If you were in an elevator to a building and she didn't recognize you because you're going to a different floor, or if you're going to another meeting, she would still say hello. Like, she was amazing. She's probably the best networker I've ever worked with. And the goal there is, like, she was always trying to spread her message and what she was trying to do, not sell, but more like who she was and what she represented. Now, what was done well there was follow-up. So if you gave a card to somebody, it was you go right back to the office, you find them on LinkedIn, you connect right away, you go, hey, it was great meeting you in the Uber or softball or whatever have you, and then you start to build that relationship. Maybe send them a coffee. Huh? So that was sort of what I've tried to do in my networking, and it worked out well when we started Coffee Center. We actually needed to raise a little bit of money to actually complete the project. And I was at my softball game telling a buddy what I was trying to do and what success we've had so far. And he was like, I actually just sold a share I had in a different company. I'd love to help you out. Like, come into my office tomorrow and we'll have a conversation. Like, well, how much money you actually need to get this thing done. So, and that was purely just from having conversations and never really stop being connected. So I think that's my advice in terms of networking. I guess 3 main takeaways is never really stop. You can be anywhere and be networking, and follow up are kind of the 3 main things that I always like to do in terms of meeting new folks.
Yeah, and also be good with names is also really good, because
yeah, right. I wish I was. I think that's something I wish I was better about. I mean, like, you know, people how they take a business card, like they write the information on the back of the card, or like what it is like they knew about that person. But that's what I have to do, because I'll forget, like at a conference or something like that. Like, you have to write on the back, like, wore a red shirt, talked about like the Warriors basketball team. So like there's some sort of like common tie there that I can use kind of later.
Okay. Oh, thanks for that. And I have another one. Yeah, and why? Okay, you already have the idea of sending copy. Do you have any experience? And that's a B2B model, right? So, do you have any experience working with a B2C, or having to go straight with the customer, more like B2C? What you think, which is best in your experience, or yeah?
Yeah, you know, we not yet. I think we built the platform with having so many partners, with being able to track everything. I think if you have a friend who tracks your friendship in Salesforce, that's really weird. So probably shouldn't. Just kidding. But like I think that like we haven't gone that route yet. I think we'll get there as we build into other enterprise applications. There's a big one we'd love to build our next integration. We'd like to be Slack, because I think that'd be really cool to kind of build that out there, where you can kind of do it internally. So you can send a copy to maybe a coworker and say, hey, like, you know, let's go grab coffee and talk about X. I think like that would be a really cool add-on to our system. It's down the road a little bit, but I think that'd be pretty awesome to get there at some point.
In case you're wondering who this little fella here, this is my son.
Oh, what's up, man?
He's visiting from Hermosillo, actually, and he's here visiting at the offices. So he just stepped in and kind of curious what I was doing. So, well, we'll get him acquainted as well.
Perfect.
Part of the near self spirit is just keep the family included at all times. So, and Dario knows that too. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, Dario. Are you done, or? Because there's something that I have something, but you be the judge.
Yeah, no, just before we switch
go
the
ahead.
subject.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned about the importance of content creation in the in the enhancement of a relationship with the client, or how to guide them in the right way. Besides content creation, what else do you think that's going to be or can be a good solution for that? I don't know, for example, in your experience of selling, that you need to, I don't know, attract your audience or guide them in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I think content is great, right? But I mean, like, I can't remember the last time I got an email with a white paper in it that I actually read. Like, I'll read like the first like 3 lines. I'm like, all right, and then so I mean, a lot of it's going to be about storytelling and having a lot of use cases and success stories, right? So having a really good use case or case study about like how this client did this and they got a 10 times better response, and they sold more that year, they were able to upsell their clients more, their employees were so happy to receive a coffee on their birthday. Having use cases like that is the most effective way to grow any message or any company. And then taking those stories and then just trying to get them out there. Like talking to clients that are, I mean, even for us, I mean, talking to a client who uses us the most by thanking them like, hey, listen, thanks so much for sending 1,000 coffees this month. Like, here's a coffee from us. Like, go grab yourself a coffee from a coffee sender, and then hoping that they spread that message. I mean, you need those client advocates, right? I mean, if you don't have those people that are talking about you to their family and their coworkers and their friends, I mean, then you're never going to grow. I mean, there's so many companies that have grown with this having advocates, and you have to have that for success. I mean, the power of word of mouth is I think probably still the best marketing thing of all time because it's free if you do it properly. And if you have an angry client, you want to make sure you take care of them as fast as possible so they don't spread the wrong message. But I think that's most important, making sure the experience is amazing. And then lastly is having partners. I mean, you can't sell something without partners. So I think it's crazy if you try to. I mean, if there's someone in your space who's doing something really well and you're like, this complements us well, reach out. Like, go to LinkedIn and connect with them, or send them an email saying, hey, what you're doing is great. This is what we're doing. Would love to have a conversation on how we can work together. Because I think the thing about business is you got to work together with other people in your industry, or you're never really going to get anywhere. I mean, some of the biggest companies out there have done exactly that, and so I think that's a huge fundamental thing that you have to have, and something that we keep to heart here at Coffee Center.
Okay, and you didn't have any experience with inbound marketing? Because I was looking at your Twitter account early on, and I saw that you're really intense about coffee, or you tweet a lot of things about coffee instead. So I think, okay, if your client or your prospect is into coffee, he's looking into your Twitter account, maybe you can interact with the content you're sharing. So you have any experience with inbound or
yeah, so I mean, like a lot of what we do is email marketing here. So a lot of what we concentrate on is finding the right prospects and sending them content that's actually related to them. But I think like that brings up the point of like there kind of being two major ways to market. Like if you're targeting the big companies like the Fortune 1000, you want to make sure you have a very detailed message as to why you want to work with them, because that's a really big deal as a sales guy, right? Like that's important. Like that's going to be a major sale for you. For the SMB smaller clients, like those are the ones that you can use email marketing for. And I mean, you could still do it with the big companies, but I wouldn't suggest it. But with the smaller companies, you can send things like, this is what we're doing, this is why it's great, this is why someone who's the same size as you had success, and to set up a drip campaign that works for those guys. So to have emails that you know people that have interest there, and to have like 5 or 6 different drips that they get over a period of a month as to why they should be using your solution. And there aren't emails saying like, hey, like let's talk, and then like, hey, did you get my email? Or the famous one of like, hey, like I haven't heard from you, like can we talk again? But like actual good content of like, hey, here's 6 reasons why marketers have used Coffee Center and had success. The next one being a case study. The next one being a webinar as to like, I'll show you how this client has used this tool and like what kind of success they've had. So I think email marketing is huge. I think it's having the right content is big. Having referrals is big as well. Something that we don't do a lot of here is like the old transactional cold calling. I mean, I feel like I get cold calls on myself when I never really answered them, so I don't really know who would. And like it's kind of one of those things where if you get a hold of somebody, it's like, hey, so I'm trying to sell you a product. Like that's kind of what we talked about earlier, right? Like being a sleazy sales guy. Like most of the whole sales cycle is done online now, right? You can go to a website, you can kind of get a sense on if you like it or not. If you do, then you'll reach out, or if you do, then you'll want to have that conversation.
Okay, perfect. And there's like a better way to create the leads, or how do you just buy the huge list of emails, or you get them via networking, or what is your approach in getting that contact data?
I don't buy lists. I think that you get kind of weird stuff when you buy a list. So like what I do is like our networks and LinkedIn are pretty good, and you can actually download your entire LinkedIn network from LinkedIn. That's pretty cool. So you can download it and you can use that to leverage. We also have on our main homepage, there's a really good call to action where you can send yourself a sample coffee. And whenever you do that, like we're of course going to capture your email, and now we got you. So now we can kind of market to you. So I mean, like that's probably some of our biggest ways. And then we use Salesforce to keep track of everything. We also use a system called Matic, M-A-U-T-I-C, that keeps track of all of the. So if you were to go to our site and request a demo, you get an email.
Is it Matic?
Matic, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You get an email from us saying, hey, like, glad you have interest. Like, pick a time to demo. And like, it looks like it's from, I believe it's from me. And if you pick a time, that time just goes in our calendar. So it kind of automates the SDR process, which is pretty cool. And then we can kind of, if there's a bounce emails or things like that, we can kind of push that out of the system. So it's kind of like a whole tree. Like you got email number 1. If you responded to it, you get this one. If you respond to that one, you get this one. If you don't, you get this one. So it's kind of a whole tree as to like how you kind of trickle down into. Matic is very much like Marketo.
Okay.
Only it's free. You know,
Okay.
gotta be bootstrapped.
Okay, absolutely. Most
Yeah.
likely.
Yeah, well, I'm down, Carlos. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you a question
Yeah,
before
thank you, Ray.
we're kind of approaching the final segment of the talk, and what I see here, well, two things. Have you tried to approach HubSpot yet?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so you're not partnering with them yet, right?
Not yet. No. That's a good Chris question, but I think that would be something that I know that we're working on because that'd be a really cool partnership for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the reason why I ask is for obvious reasons, because we're using HubSpot. We're married to them right now, and I think that you did a great job in updating our stuff. So it would be great to see Coffee Sender partner with HubSpot, because then most likely Nearsoft could use it, right? The other thing, and the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, I see here that you have like several pricing plans and such, and I'm looking particularly at the enterprise one. My question to you is the following. Let's say that we're just we're a company and you approach us, and then if I ask you specifically, what's our ROI for this? What would you tell us? Or what?
Yeah, no, that's a killer question. And like when we originally built this system, we didn't build it as kind of a ROI, like what is ROI for X? Because say you're talking to a prospect and you send them a coffee at some point when you send the contract over, and then that contract gets signed. Can you say that the coffee you sent was the one item that actually closed that deal and like give that ROI to us?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. So usually how we answer that question is we build a campaign, and say with your webinar you sent coffees with one webinar and you had 3 times the amount of people that showed up to that webinar. Like that's huge ROI because you have more of a captive audience there. Say you had a deal where it got stuck and you sent that you sent that person a coffee trying to get them re-engaged, and they responded back to you. So I think that's a big ROI for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is going to be tracked in Salesforce and your marketing automation system. In terms of recruiting, it's tough to track because it's about kind of candidate experience, because it's like, hey, like, is this candidate talking to you? Yeah, they already were talking to you, but now you've kind of improved the experience by sending coffee. That's cool, but like how can you tell that really moved the needle or not? So I think for us, we don't have an exact answer just yet. We just started building some reports to keep track of how many people are using the coffees you sent, how long it takes them to use them. But in terms of ROI, it's tough for us to track just yet, but we're getting there. It's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. Let's see. I think that's pretty much does it for me.
Cool.
I think, I don't have any more questions. I'd like to ask you that if you have any more questions. I think the concept is clear. It's very promising, and we're definitely going to keep an eye on what you're building, what you're doing, and who knows, further down the road, we might be able to find common ground, and or somebody else out there might. So the thing is that to stay connected, and I'm sure the Coffee Sender is definitely going to be a smashing success. But finally, well, it's not a question, or sort of a question, Braydan, but if you were to forecast, let's say, an ideal scenario for Coffee Sender, what would it look like?
I'd like to make $300 million a year. No,
You're my kind.
Yeah. I think for us, probably when we look to the future, one of the biggest things that we want is a lot of companies using us to engage and to generate more meetings and to generate better relationships with their actual customers and clients and employees. So if we're able to have thousands of companies using us for that, a lot in the enterprise, a lot in the mid-market, and the even SMB world, and like actually leveraging Coffee Center to start and build those relationships, that's huge for us. I mean, and if in 6 months' time we're doing 1 million coffees a month, like sending 1 million coffees a month, then I think that we're going to be ecstatic. Not 6 months from now. If we're doing that a couple of years from now, I think we'll be super excited about that. So I think like that's kind of our goal in kind of building this company out and kind of seeing where it goes. And of course, success, you kind of asked earlier, like we love to hear the stories as to who you sent the coffee to, if it worked or not, was it successful, did it move the needle for you? And I think if we're able to hear more of those stories and kind of keep growing on the coffee route, and then seeing if we can expand into other things as well with the same plumbing we built, that'd be kind of awesome too. So hope that answers your question. But no, it was great talking to you guys. It was, and of course, any other questions you have, would love to answer them.
Actually, yeah, it was great for us as well. I'm sure that you would agree. Finally, Braydan, do you have any Twitter handle that you can share with our audience?
I do. It's byoung1222.
We should probably go to Notepad.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
Remember, this is high tech.
Yeah.
This is Chinese technology, paper and ink. You know. Okay, so just write it down and show it to the camera. That'll be great. And so, and you folks out there, whoever's watching us now or in the future, you can just touch base with Braydan.
That's a B, right?
Yeah, that's
John.
Here, I'm gonna write that one more time.
Okay, yeah, please do.
Yeah. Excuse me, Carlos. How much time will we have left?
Well, about 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me just, I'm sharing with the audience Braydan's Twitter handle, which is byoung1222. There you have it, folks. And of course, Braydan, as you know, as I mentioned, it's all your information is going to be on the page that we're going to be creating and putting up real soon.
Perfect.
Okay, Dario, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, just like the last thing, not a question, but in all your startup experience, what is one of the most, I don't know, interesting stories or funny stories that you have under your sleeve? That I can believe this turned up, like really interesting startup story that you can share with the audience.
Man, I think one of the most interesting parts about like running your own company like this is you have days where you come into work and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Like you are working harder than you've ever worked for less money than you've ever gotten, and you need to convince yourself sometimes that this, you're building this because you saw something and you need to kind of push through with this. And so I have an amazing support system where I've had days where I've gone home and my wife's like, what do you, she's like, you chose this is what you wanted, and this is exciting for you, and you've been talking about this for years and you're finally there. So yeah, you have to get there, way earlier than you ever have. Yeah, you have to put in more time, but I mean, this is your dream, so follow through with it. So I think that has been probably one of the funniest startup stories, and that's not just once that happens. You're like, yeah, you're right. Like that's literally like once a week. I go home, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like we had some problem go wrong, and she looks at me, she's like, really, again? So I think like that's important to remember, to have a good support system, whether that be your friends being like, do you get it together? And I think to kind of tell another story is you got to still find some sort of separation, because when you're hanging out with your guy friends and or girlfriends and like you're talking about the startup story and what happened that day at your startup, you got to kind of keep a level head about it too, because they only want to hear kind of the 40,000 foot view, and it's like, all right, move on. It's like, cool, so you're running your own thing, and that's great. So what else is going on? So like I think to keep a separation and to be able to at least have your escape still is important, whatever that might be. I think is important to keep.
Okay, yeah. So to-do list to the startup: number 1, get a good wife. Number 2, yeah, okay, we'll keep that in mind. So yeah.
Okay, and for those of us who are already into that, it's probably turned your current wife into a good one for the startup.
Oh,
Okay, or the startup.
that was a,
I'm
that
talking
was
about for all those wives out there. I'm talking specifically about the startup view of the world, because it can get
or your husband, right, or whoever
or
it might
husband,
be,
yeah,
or significant other. I mean, like this, as long as you have that support system to
exactly.
when you go home and you're sitting on the couch and you've been there for 3 hours and your shoes are still on, they're like, "What are you doing? Like you wanted this. Like this is your."
yeah.
So and I think that like that's as long as you have that person to push you through it, and when you walk in the next day and when you're sitting in your office, like, why am I doing this? I could just go somewhere else. Like I think that's important to have and to keep a level head and to always stay focused on what the goal was when you first walked in and why you first started the company. Or whatever it is, whatever you're doing, whatever that goal is, even if it's not a company, if you're training for a marathon, I think you can apply that to anything.
Yeah. Put the shield above video every day. Just do it.
Yeah, actually, my motivation is not going to be Carlos giving me a motivational speech every morning saying, "Hey, this is a great guy that I'm talking to."
Yeah, we're sort of sending motivational speech to our customers to enhance their relationship.
Yeah.
Hey.
Like, hey, good morning. Today's going to be a great day.
Yeah, you look beautiful today. So, okay, Ted. Thanks very much, man.
Okay, guys, we need to wrap up the session. Braydan, I really want to thank you for your time, having shared your experience in the startup world. And I'm sure we're going to be in touch. We're going to keep an eye on what's happening with coffeesender.com. And Dario, thank you as ever. And any final words for words of wisdom for your audience, Braydan?
I appreciate the time. Check out coffeesender.com. Tell me what you think, and send some coffees. We always love that, and appreciate the time.
Absolutely, it was our pleasure. So we're going to be in touch.
Great.
Folks, thank you again for having been here with us today in this one more episode of Dojo Live in rainy, beautiful Mexico City. Thank you all. You have a wonderful day. Goodbye, all. Take care.
Peace.